Times have changed now than when they were in high school slightly. So when I was in high school or college, I would listen to, motivational stuff like Napoleon Hill or whatever. They were on CD. But now with the podcasts and Audible, honestly, for years I was a painting contractor and I earned a good living. I wasn't getting rich, but I earned a good living. But driving from appointment to appointment, I was in real estate university every day throughout the day, listening to real estate stuff, books, podcasts, and not just real estate, mostly real estate, but also just general motivational and, like business, sales stuff, just constantly pumping my brain with great info. For a while there, I was listening to Howard Stern all the time, which was amazingly entertainment. I just love it.
Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for sharing this one with your friends. We've got a great one for you today. We've got Pete Schnepp on the show today. He's going to talk a lot about entrepreneurship. He's going to talk about the path and timing of entrepreneurship. He had the busiest schedule you've ever heard of all his life. He's going to talk about how to have balance and layering and getting everything done and spinning all the plates. He's going to get into how to find role models when they're not right in front of your face and his process of working to excellence. We've got a great show. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Edge of Excellence. Well, Pete Schnepp, thank you so much for coming out of the heat there in Phoenix, Arizona to make the show. Welcome to the Edge of Excellence.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Well, I'm excited. We're going to talk today about the path to entrepreneurship. What is entrepreneurship? And all the different, well, not all of them, but some of the different lessons that Pete took from his years of starting companies. But before we do, Pete, we're going to start the same way we always start. What is your definition of excellence?
I was thinking about this, and I think excellence is in the journey. I don't think it's the destination. So to me, excellence is not something that's really achieved. It's the pursuit. It's integrity, it's persistence, it's grit, it's clarity, it's intentionality, and it's never ending.
Okay, so you never achieve it. It is the process, kind of aligns with some Eastern thought, karma yoga. Enjoy the process. If you have clarity of intention, sincerity of action, purity of heart, let go of the action, enjoy the process. So you're in the pursuit of excellence. That also kind of aligns, and you and I are in the Entrepreneurs Organization. Shout out to EO, where I saw Pete after many, many years at a conference recently. And you hear people talking about having goals, and you hear people talking about becoming excellent. But as they achieve those goals, and as they achieve what maybe you and I see as excellence, it moves along the horizon. So you hear people talking about, hey, stop and celebrate, enjoy where you've been, but there's always this pursuit of becoming better and better and better. Maybe not achieving more and more, but becoming better and better and better. I love it. So let's talk about you for a little bit. Let's go way back in time. You went to UT Austin, and how's the football team at UT Austin? Are they in a bowl?
They usually wind up getting into some small bowl. They did not make it to the conference championship, but we're coming back. Sooner or later, we're coming back.
Okay, go Longhorns.
We've got the Manning kid with a verbal commitment coming to us, and it's going to be a game changer.
Is he related to Peyton or Eli Manning?
Yeah, I don't know, he's like a nephew or something, but he's like the top quarterback recruit, I think, in the country. Okay, somehow or another, he's got a commitment to UT, and we're moving over to the SEC, so we're going to be in good company. So we're coming back.
Because it's an awesome school, because it's a fun place to go. They even have Formula One in Austin, let alone 6 blocks of awesome parties and music every night. Of course, someone would want to go there. Well, before we're going to get into high school, we're going to get into UT, and we're going to get into coming out of college and becoming an entrepreneur and investing in real estate, building a real estate business, and building a couple other companies, and how you did that, and how you vet your deals. And we're going to spend some time on entrepreneurship today. But real quickly, before we do, let's go back in time. Where'd you go to high school before you went to UT Austin?
I was outside of Houston. It was a school called Spring High.
Spring High. So you're in Spring High. It's pretty hard to get into UT Austin. You and I are a little bit older than our audience. It's really hard to get into now, and it was really hard to get into back then. So what were you doing to get ahead in high school, and were you purposely setting yourself up on this path to excellence, or were you not quite aware at that time?
Yeah, so in high school, I was a good kid. I was a good student. I really didn't date a lot. I was a baseball player, and so I spent my time perfecting my craft and trying to get better all the time in baseball. I knew I wanted to go to college. My mom ingrained in me that I had to, have good grades, and so I was a good student. I wasn't the best, but I was a good kid, and I knew that by doing the right things and working hard would eventually work out for me. As soon as I could work, I started working while I was in high school. And yeah, I mean, I tried hard. I tried to be a good kid. I tried to make my mom proud. And I just kind of, I knew I wanted to be rich one day. and, and I didn't know how or what, but I knew that if I did my best and got good grades, hopefully I'd figure it out soon enough.
Okay, so the morals that you're talking about, doing the right things, and then the values, maybe working hard is one of the values. So you started to develop that morality while you're in high school. And when I was in high school, I had it in my family, but maybe I didn't practice it so well. So I did some kind of bad things that I regret, by the way, and I've repented. So you weren't doing the bad things. You maybe the morals. I remember the day, by the way, for me, I had to write a letter to my parents, and I realized what a pain in the ass I was. So that letter in some college freshman class. They made us write this letter. And I realized while writing the letter what a pain in the ass I was, and literally stopped being a pain in the ass that day. But you didn't have that. So my morals set in that day. I remember the family values coming into my life. How were you realizing what the right things were, and how were you leading yourself to act on that? Maybe someone listening right now hasn't figured that out yet, and they're already in their 20s. What did you do to figure that out so early?
I mean, really, it was just ingrained by my mom. I mean, you know, I don't know that I figured that out. She just ingrained that. She almost made me scared. Like, if you're a bad kid and you do the wrong things, you're going to be a fuck up, and your life is going to be ruined, right? And I grew up. We were poor. I didn't have much. Growing up in elementary school, like I didn't realize it back then, but I was the kid that got free lunches at school,
Yeah.
right? And it didn't mean anything to me back then, but like, we came from nothing. And so my mom struggled. She ran her own businesses. She was actually an entrepreneur, not a good one, but I saw that. I saw her work ethic, and I knew that I didn't want to live my life poor. So it almost became like, okay, well, I see how we're living now, and I can do better than that. And in the way that I'm gonna set myself up for that is by doing good at everything that I do, by being a good student, by working my ass off on the field. I wanted to be a professional baseball player, so that was my passion. But senior year, I realized I didn't have the talent to do that. So then I thought I'd be a baseball coach because I didn't know what else to do. And so I actually went to college and I majored in kinesiology, which is what you need to be a coach. And then 2 years in, I was taking a class where they taught us how to throw frisbees and juggle, and how to be like an elementary school PE teacher. And at that time, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm paying for my own college, and this is what I'm getting." I realized in order to become a coach at any good level, you really need to have connections or have played at that level. And then, honestly, it was probably shortly after that when I discovered College Works, and my path changed. But
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah.
that I had to have a good work ethic and persistence to get out of the poverty or living poor mentality.
All right. So there's an awareness in you. There's awareness of what your mom's doing. There's an awareness of how hard she's working. There's an awareness of the wisdom she's conveying on how to treat others, and what doing the right thing is. And maybe you had this little pain point that you thought you were going to be just a screw up if you didn't follow that, but there's an awareness from you, and then there's a mom and a family showing you the path, setting the example. And some of our listeners may not have that at home, and if you don't, you can look for mentors elsewhere. right? You can find someone else that's exhibiting some of the traits that you think you want to align with later in life. And Pete decided right then when he was young, he was going to align with those values and align with that work ethic. Other thing I want to mention is you and I have the same thing. Now, my parents didn't have a lot of money. I wouldn't say we were poor. We didn't have a lot of money, and other kids did have a lot of money. And I think I got some free lunches at some point in time too. And I know when I was really young, there was some food stamps involved. Well, my mom doesn't like me for some reason to talk about it. And I had that same drive to be rich, right? Because I mean, you see my parents skipped meals, and your parents are skipping meals so you and your brother can eat. Your dad's working 3 jobs in my case. So when you're in that situation where you're coming up from nothing, maybe it's easier to see than if you're not in that situation. But either way, at some point in time, you look around and realize how you want to be, what you want to be like, but you don't know exactly what's going to get you there. So you're playing the process of elimination. So I want to be a professional baseball player. Okay, that got you to where you were. If you weren't driven by that, you wouldn't have gotten into UT Austin probably, but that's not going to work. I'm going to look at kinesiology. How do CollegeWorks help you figure out? And actually, before we get to CollegeWorks, you go into UT Austin. I just want to flag one thing. You had 2 part-time jobs while you were going to college, right?
Yeah, actually I did because I had to pay for myself. I got some small grants, but I had a loan, but I was working basically at a pizza joint, making pizzas and delivering pizzas at night. During the day, I forget what kind of job they're called, but they're like on campus jobs. And it
Yeah.
was pretty flexible. So both of them were part time. I could do like one during the day in between classes. The other one was at night. And then I played rugby too. It's club rugby, but you got practices and you got tournaments on the weekend. And then CollegeWorks came about, and so there was 3 years where I was juggling all of those, and that's a lot to do, especially in the spring when you're selling. Juggling all three. In the summer, the on-campus job I don't think stayed on, but for the most part, I was juggling 2 to 3 jobs at a time, really because it allowed me the most flexible opportunity to maximize my time and income while I was in school.
Okay, so how many people did that?
None,
Yeah,
none.
none.
I was the only
So
one.
I remember you, and it all comes back to me as we start talking. I remember you, and I also remember Ryan Jantz because he was an engineer, and I think he had 2 part-time jobs for a period, but I think he dropped it. So your time management must have been amazing, right?
It had to be.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
had to be because you're going to school, you're in kinesiology, then you changed to what major?
I didn't change because I realized I'd have to start over with the credits. So I graduated with kinesiology. I had a minor in business.
And that's a science degree?
It's the study of the human body. So
I
it's
well, I know, but is that a
education.
BS that you got?
Education. Yeah, BS.
Okay, so you get a BS, which is, a little bit harder. You've got a job during the day between classes, so there goes some of that study time in the day. Then you have a job at night when most people are studying. So somehow you're figuring out how to get your studying in, your work in, your school in, and you start doing CollegeWorks, which is, one of the hardest internships you can do. And you're also at CollegeWorks completely your own manager. You're completely independent as far as how much you work. You can just pretend you're working and lie, and people are wondering why you're not doing well, or you can go out and do it. So were you able to have any fun during that time during college doing all that?
Yeah. I mean, I figured it out. I would show up, after my pizza job at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd bring a bunch of pizza to the party, and I'd party till 3 or 4. And I was, and I still am. I'm a morning person, so I was really good at getting up early. I would have friends. My freshman year, I was really good about not missing school. I was very deliberate. Like I didn't want to be the kid that missed classes because that's how kids dropped out. And I had friends that would try to keep me out all night, like as a challenge to try to get me to miss classes. But I was good at being disciplined, at showing up at my classes and just making things work. There was actually, here's another job that I had too. I signed up to do note taking for, it was a small business fair. So
So you were layering. You're
yes, I was
layering, right?
layering.
Yeah.
I
So
figured, okay, well, if I can get paid to take notes, then that's extra motivation for me to do it. And the act of taking notes helped me remember everything so that I had to actually spend less time after the fact studying. So it all worked out perfectly. And I
okay.
got
So
paid for it.
a lot of people go to college and have a job, and they're going to hard colleges. UT is a hard college. A lot of people go to a hard college, have a hard major, and have a job. Not everybody has two jobs and all that, and the toughest internship and having fun, but it's kind of inspirational, right? If you're listening right now and you're still in college, look what Pete did. If your name's Jake Stewart and you're coming home to do some summer school online, remember what Pete did, because you can do an internship and summer school at the same time. You can do study abroad and summer school at the same and an internship at the same time. You can have a job, have an internship, and get a degree and have fun at the same time. And what I hear you saying is, one, never miss school. How do you miss a class? Ding dong. The professor telling you exactly what they're going to test you on. Two, discipline to a plan. Pete's organized. He's been organized since college, at least. He's still organized. He can still do all this. He sticks to his plan. And then the concept of layering, and I don't know, there's someone that wrote a book that includes that concept, and I forget who it is. You can do more than one thing. If you're super busy and you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, do laundry with them, eat with them, study with them, layer. If you want to remember to do things like call your mom, every time you do your laundry, call your mom, so you can layer and have routines. Anything else to your key to success that early in life, being able to juggle all this besides those three that I pulled out of your discussion?
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't that when you put it that way, it sounds really awesome how I did that. But
Yeah. And that's the other thing. You
right
never know how awesome you are while you're being awesome, right? That's part of humility, and part
in
of
the moment,
excellence
it
is being
was
humble.
just this is how I make it work, and I knew that I wanted to make it work. I was scared of failure. I saw all these other kids that would go and drop out. They would, their parents would pay for their college, and they wouldn't show up, and then a year or two later, they're gone. And I was paying for it myself, and I knew that I wanted to get value out of it. I knew that I didn't want to have to go move home with my mom. I was not going to do that. That was not an option. So it just wasn't an option for me. I had to make it. I had to make it work. That was just life, And actually, it was pretty cool because I made it work. The job on campus was so flexible. It was very little work. I sat there in an office, and most of the time, I could get my studying done there
Layering again.
layering while I got paid and I did the work that they needed. And so now that you call it layering, that's what it was. I didn't know what it was then. It was just making all the pieces fit.
Yeah, and the people that listen to the show, a lot of them are out of college. They're driving in their car right now thinking, how do I get everything done? Well, Pete did. How did Pete do it? We just walked you through. Never miss school. So what is the biggest thing that you need to never miss? Had a plan and stuck to it, layered, developed routines. And so you're going to college, someone swings in, you start doing the college works thing, which, first year, you didn't have any idea what you were doing. Was it the first year we were in Texas? Was that your first year?
No, you had been in there before because there were DMs.
Okay. But
For
it was
some
near the first year. Okay. So, but your first year, you don't know what you're doing. It's, 30 hours a week. You're trying to figure it out, and you're working your other job, and you're getting good grades, and you're getting your degree. Then in the summer, holy moly. And then, after that, it probably evens out a little bit. And while you're taking kinesiology, knowing you don't want to do kinesiology, you're doing this business management thing. And a lot of people might come to College Works and stick with kinesiology and become a physical therapist or whatever. Wasn't right for you. What was your process to figure out that when you got out of school, you wanted to go into the corporate world of home building?
Man, 3 years of college works, and I did not want to be an entrepreneur anymore. I needed a regular paycheck because now I had student loans. I wanted stability because you don't get that as an entrepreneur. But at the time, that's what I wanted. That's
Yeah.
what I thought I needed. So, I've always I found my way by copying other people,
Yeah.
by mirror, like I grew up without a dad. And so I would look at my friends and their dads and which ones were doing well, which ones weren't. And that was how I had a buddy, his dad worked in home building. Every time I would go back to his place in Houston, it was a beautiful house. They seemed to be doing really well. And then my buddy got into home building. So I just followed suit. He moved to Phoenix after college. He got in with a builder. I stayed in touch with him. He said, "Hey, come on out here. I'll get you hired." So I did. I packed up all my crap after college. I left everything that I knew, drove out here, moved in. I slept on his couch, and I got hired on at that company. And so then I became a corporate guy learning the home building world.
Okay. So, and I just want to stop there for a second because people need different things at different times. So you're doing the entrepreneurial thing at college works. You decide, hey, I want stability. I need stability right now. And I bet you if you didn't find the stability right then for that period of time, you wouldn't have gone on to start a bunch of companies. You probably would have burnt out and really burnt out, like gone too far and burning out. So you have different times for different things in your life, and plans change. So you're going one direction and you're trying things out, just like you're trying out kinesiology. You keep going until you realize maybe this isn't right for me. But at the time, going and working in a big home building business as a project manager and getting a normal paycheck with a normal salary and a normal way of doing things was what you wanted, especially after so many years of grinding it out. You needed a little break, a little pause. And then the second thing I want to point out again to people looking for role models, you're looking for an example of what you want to become. So you're looking around and you see the elements. Probably you had little elements of each of these role models and you were discounting some of the things that weren't working. Like I'm sure I'm a role model for people. I hope they ignore when I yell or act a little crazy. So you're looking for the good part of these different role models as examples of what you want to become, and you're trying things out. So if you need to stop for a second, you're 20, you're driving the car, you need to change gears for a while, change gears. You don't even have to have a goal for coming back. It might be the right time, but you're looking for examples of what you want to become, trying things out and expecting things to change. So you're working in that company and you shifted to a big company. Can you say the name of the big company you worked in?
Toll Brothers.
Toll Brothers. Okay. And they're a huge, huge building company. You're as a project manager, you're there for a few years. And they started laying people off because the recession occurred?
That was, yeah, 2007, 2008. The housing market just started collapsing. At the time, I remember I was one of 32 project managers just in Arizona. And I think I was the youngest one. So like I was excelling in the corporate world. I was kicking ass. You know, a lot of it came back to everything that I learned in college works. But I was the youngest guy. I was kicking ass, and I was probably the lowest paid one, I'm guessing. But then they started laying everybody off, and after a year or two of layoffs, it was down to me and one other guy, and it wasn't the same dynamic. And everybody, even my boss, got a transfer, so they're piling everybody's work onto me, and I'm handling it like my boss's work, everybody's. And I asked for a raise because now I was doing 10 times the work, and they said, "Well, you know, that's corporate isn't going to approve that because of the market. There's just nothing you can do. You know, be lucky that you have a job." And so that was the turning point for me. I had already gotten my real estate license, and you know, I was a smart kid, and I realized that I'm never going to hit my financial goals if I stayed there, and I needed to get creative and figure something out.
So again, different times for different things. So you're on this path as you laid it out towards excellence. You're in pursuit. You're persistent. You've got grit. You've got integrity. You've got intentionality. And you're starting to see that maybe it's time to change again. And so you started a little painting company because that's what you knew how to do. And then you realized maybe that didn't align with your values from way back when again. And having that side gig maybe wasn't honoring your commitment to Toll Brothers. So you gave up the side gig and went back and worked full time through your MBA at Toll Brothers. Is that right?
Sort of. The MBA was separate thing. Like they offered a tuition reimbursement, so I had taken a few classes like online, and they paid for it. But that's a separate thing. Part of me shutting down the painting company that I was running on the side, which is Envision Painting, is that I realized that if they found out that I was doing that as part of my employment agreement, they could come after me, and I'd have to pay them like 10 or 15 grand.
Okay.
I was like, okay, well, I don't want to get caught doing that because I wasn't at work very often. And I was managing both. I mean, basically, I was treating it like two
Yeah,
different jobs.
you had 3 jobs
I
and
was great
school
at it. Yeah.
and partying when you were in college. So why not?
I mean,
Okay, so
you learn how to manage off of the phone. That's what I learned in college works. And this is what I was doing. I was managing multiple things. with my phone, right?
Oh, right. So you decide to you decide to look out for your employment agreement and pay attention to the agreement you had with Toll Brothers. You shut the business down. You stay at Toll Brothers for a little while longer, and at that point in time, it's just too much, and you're going to go off and just focus on being an entrepreneur 100%. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I worked out a severance. I came to him and I told him, hey, it's not working for me. I want to go off and start off my own thing. I've just got so much opportunity, and I'm not happy anymore. And but at the same time, I had a ton of knowledge in my head, and I said, I don't want to just put in my notice and leave you guys hanging. But if we can work out a severance, I will make the transition as best as possible, get all the projects transitioned to whomever you want to have take over. And in the meantime, I'll start my business. But that way, it was a mutually beneficial transition. And it was perfect. I got paid while I started up my company. And so there was no period of time where I was broke.
So win, win, win. So
Yeah.
and the lesson there, if you're listening right now, and maybe it's a change in it's a changing time for you. You're open, you're real, you're honest. Now, a lot of times you're in a job and you don't have any knowledge that's valuable to the business. So, you're just going to get escorted out the door. But other times, like when you're maybe you're in sales, maybe you're in project management, maybe you're in the medical career. There needs to be a transition of the company's revenue and the company's knowledge. So you're having a real conversation. You're being open. You're being honest. So that's your integrity in your pursuit of excellence. You've got grit. It may work, it may not. You've got your intentionality from your definition of excellence. And there's some lessons in there for everybody. You've got these you've got the changing Pete and the changing world kind of coming together, looking for a change of your situation. And you're going back to those morals that your mom taught you and back to those values that you have and being real with your employer. So you get into Envision Painting, and that becomes your full-time gig. And you're doing residential construction, residential painting construction.
Yeah.
All right. And you go into business with your brother a little bit later, and you start the Bug Science Pest Control Company. And at the same time, you're taking some of your profits and building your real estate portfolio. Is that how it went?
So the pest control company is much later. The pest control company is 2020. So I ran Envision for a while. Really, I was doing that. Actually, shortly after I started it, there was other opportunities that came up. People wanted to partner with me on other businesses, and I said yes to a lot of them. And those didn't work out because I was just getting pulled in too many places.
Okay.
So I had three failed businesses while I had Envision. Envision was the stable one, the steady one, and yeah, and I started as soon as I started making enough money to where I had, a chunk of change, some reserves every year. I started buying properties. Just I encountered. I had a dinner one night with some other people and their grandparents. They were fairly well off, not super wealthy, but they had some rental properties. They implanted this idea into my head that, hey, if you buy one property a year, in 10 years you'll be set, right? And then it goes back to, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in college, but at the time I couldn't really act on it. But now I'm starting to earn a good living and I'm starting to have some savings. And so it all started. I started just saving every dollar I could, living way below my means, sacrificing the big vacations, sacrificing, the nice cars and all this stuff that contractors will spend on. And every time I had, a chunk of change, I would look for a property to buy. And I've been doing that for 10 years or so now. And then just in 2020, I started Bug Science, which my brother is running. Yeah.
Okay. So that's basically that little story right there is everything that we've talked about on the show in one. You're trying things out. There's different times for different things. You're looking for role models. If you're listening right now, he didn't listen to the people around him about their cars and their vacations. He ignored all that. It was this couple that he met that told him about real estate investment, and he found that little piece to emulate. You've got intentionality. You're still back at that little kid. And I've been there before. I want to be rich. And it's not for the money. It's for the freedom, by the way. if you're listening, if you're one of those kids and you're like, oh my God, I can't do with this anymore, it's not the money, it's the freedom that matters. So you're in pursuit, and then back to your college life. You have all this confidence because everybody else is screwing around, smoking weed and partying and going to school and thinking that's a full college life. You realize with discipline, you can have so much more. So you just apply this discipline that you learned in college, or maybe you learned it in high school when you were also working jobs, playing baseball and going to school. And you apply that to your intentionality. And all of a sudden you get this real estate empire. So it's an amazing story. And I want to get into two things. You and I saw each other at an EO function. It was so nice to see you. Where do you, I know maybe EO is the answer. Where are you finding these role models? Where are you developing your plans? Where, if you need any outside accountability, where are you getting that? Where are you learning about the latest theories like Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Is that Guy Kawasaki? Is that who wrote that? Guy Kawasaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Where are you getting all that?
Well, that's an old book, by the way. I read that
Yeah,
first time in
I
college.
met him. I met him in Arizona, actually.
Yeah, he lives out here. Well, one of his houses. Times have changed now than when they were in high school slightly. So when I was in high school or college, I mean, I would listen to, motivational stuff like Napoleon Hill or whatever. They were on CD. But
Yeah.
now with the podcasts and Audible, I mean, honestly, for years I was a painting contractor and I earned a good living. I wasn't getting rich, but I earned a good living. But driving from appointment to appointment, I was in real estate university every day throughout the day, listening to real estate stuff, books, podcasts, and not just real estate, mostly real estate, but also just general motivational and, like business, sales stuff, just constantly pumping my brain with great info. For a while there, I was listening to Howard Stern all the time, which was amazingly entertainment. I just love it. And after you hear enough knuckleheads on your radio that have gotten rich by doing this or by doing that, making millions of dollars, eventually you're going to be like, holy shit, if that knucklehead can do it, I can do it. And you start doing one step at a time. And everything you need to know is free nowadays on YouTube, whatever.
So it's what you've been saying. You got discipline with your time. You're layering your car ride with education, not news or comedy. You've got a routine that you've developed. And so you're listening right now. What do? Align some of the stuff that you want to do. It's all this big stuff Pete's talking about. Align it with stuff you already do. You're in the car. You want to learn about real estate or sales or biology or geography, whatever. Use your time. Layer that time in the car. You don't drive to work. Put it in the bathroom when you're taking a shower. You can find these role models and find these systems and find these ways of doing things by investing. And so then you decided to join EO. And just a shout out to the Entrepreneurs Organization. That's where I learned leadership as a member of the board, a volunteer member of the board. That's where I met some of my most inspiring friends. That's where I was exposed to the world and thought leaders of the world. So you found EO. How'd you find EO, and what do you get out of EO? And what would you recommend to others that maybe aren't eligible for EO?
Yeah, so it was a point in my life where I was doing pretty well, and I was the biggest fish in my pond. Like you're doing well, and the people around you aren't doing as well, and you can't really talk about all that stuff to everybody. But actually, I was introduced to EO through a friend of mine that I met in a BNI group, like a networking chapter, and he was in it, and he said, "Hey, you should check this out." And so I did, and it was a moment in my life where I really needed it. And I was actively seeking to surround myself with a higher caliber of people. So I learned more about it. I said, "Yeah, this is exactly what I need." I signed up. It was at the beginning of COVID, and we were locked down, and it's not cheap to join EO. You got to write a big check. And so I signed up, and I had nothing but Zoom meetings, and then like 4 months later, you got your second check that you got to pay. And so I was in it for a lot of money with a bunch of Zooms, but I knew it was going to work out because I knew the philosophy, I knew the history of it. And so I'm almost 3 years in, and it's done exactly what I've hoped it would. It's put me around a higher caliber of people. I've raised the level of, my environment, and it opens your eyes when you're around people that are just killing it in life and business. It opens your eyes to what's possible, more so than you ever would have known if you don't see it, right? And just like the podcast, after you see, after you hear 5 or 6 knuckleheads on a radio talking about how they've made millions, well, when you get to know 5 or 6 knuckleheads personally that have made, way more money than you have, or done things that are just way more amazing than you ever have, it becomes so much more real that it's possible, and your limit of possibilities just expands exponentially when you surround yourself with those type of people.
So you basically sought out more role models.
Yeah.
You intentionally, and you're probably pretty self-aware, so you probably, it was the time to get some additional support. Something's coming down, you've got that pursuit, you've got that intentionality, and Cato always says you are the sum of your 5 closest friends. So you were looking for a group of people that lifted you up, and shout out to EO for lifting Pete and for lifting me. It's kind of similar to your choosing a partner. So you chose your brother as a partner. People listening right now, maybe we want to one day be an entrepreneur. You chose your forum group at EO, which is kind of a partnership. How do you vet your partnerships? Probably your suppliers, some of your project managers. How do you vet your partnerships, and what advice do you have for people listening that might want to follow your path and start a business with their brother, or find a support group like you found?
Yeah. So honestly, I don't feel like I've done a good job at vetting partners too much. Going
Because of
into business with,
the 3 failures that you had?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And by the way, every entrepreneur's had a few failures.
You've got
Okay.
to fail. Yeah, you've got to
But that's
fail
how you
forward.
learn, right?
Yeah, you don't realize it in the beginning unless you know. But I know now that every failure just makes you stronger. But yeah, I mean, going into business with family is really tough. It's been a challenge. It's good though. But the reason I decided to do it is he's had a really tough life. He's never, he's struggled a lot, and so I feel like all of his failures in the past, he was ready. And we've had a failure. One of those failed businesses in the past, like 10 years prior, was together. And then he worked for me for Envision for a while. That was a failure. Then he went off into the bug business, and he worked for 5 different pest control companies. He realized the ceiling is very low as an employee in that industry. But after 5 years of experience and a ton of failures, he needed something more. And I was looking for a new opportunity. So I think it was just timing. And so far, it's working out well. We're 2.5, 3 years in, and the business is growing like crazy. We've made an acquisition, our first acquisition already. We're looking to make another one pretty soon here. And I've realized that pest control is, at first, I thought it'd be a lot like painting, but it's a totally different business model. So it is a new challenge for me, and it's not all gravy at all. We have a lot of arguments and we fight, but we both know that it's for the greater good, and debate can be healthy, very healthy. Yeah.
Just taking a little pause here. Do you want all that on the podcast? Your brother may listen to the podcast. You cool with that, or you want to read?
I'm okay with that. I mean, we're an open book. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for asking, though.
Okay. Wow. And I've had the same partners for, this is my 30th year.
That's
And
great.
and we have arguments. Now they start off in the first couple of years, they're a little bit more intense and a little bit more ferocious. After about, I don't know, 15, so you may have a little bit of a run. We don't really argue that much anymore. When anybody does, the other ones kind of laugh because it's pretty funny. So every once in a while, someone gets pissed off at somebody and we laugh. But you must, I mean, you're raised by the same person, you have the same values, you've probably got a strong work ethic, so you're looking for someone to go into business with. But again, it's a different thing at different times for different people. So it was your time. And every entrepreneur eventually, once they become successful, starts other companies for some reason, usually way outside the scope of what they should be doing, and they usually lose their ass. And so you did it 3 times. I had quite a few of them. I don't even keep count anymore. And then you realize what your core competency is. You realize what you're good at. So that comes with wisdom. If you're listening right now, wisdom is the combination of experience and time. Now, Pete got real wise real fast because he worked like 100 hours a week between school and his 3 jobs when he was young. And then he's working for Toll Brothers, probably working 60, 70 hours a week, and he starts a side business. So he's got this extra experience from extra. So you're basically, what'd you say you were, 43?
I am 41.
41 years old. So he's probably 61 in wisdom because he well, it is. You accelerate it by having a bunch of things going on. So you're not going to be able to really fully vet every experience and every person, but you got to go back to what we said earlier. You're trying things because that's what gives you that wisdom. So you try it out. But I look for, just as a side note, in partnerships, similar values, moving in a similar direction with a similar work ethic. I start there. Skill sets is probably in there somewhere, but me and my partners all have the same exact skill set. So similar, but we've been together for 30 years. So similar values, similar work ethic, moving in the same direction. I've only got 2 more questions for you. One, and I think I know the answer to this one. Are you surprised by where you're at today? If we went back to the young Pete and said, hey, here's where you're going to be when you're 41, would that young Pete be totally surprised?
No,
No?
no, I think, yeah, looking back to my younger self, I'm probably pretty close to where I would expect, maybe a little bit further than I would have expected as a kid. But at the same time, like when I compare myself now, I feel like I'm not as far as I should be.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good answer. That's an answer aligned with your definition of excellence. Always in pursuit, the horizon's moving. I thought you were going to say yes, you were. And I think the probably one of the keys to your success is my next question. What sacrifice, when you look back, is there? I've got one that I can think of. I have a similar history to you, but one sacrifice I made where I'm like, God, I can't believe I'm doing this. And I look back and go, thank God I did that. Do you have one of those for the audience?
I don't think there's one, honestly. I think it's a series of ongoing sacrifices that have compounded over time.
Yeah. And do you look at them as sacrifices or investments now?
They're investments. Yeah,
They're-
absolutely.
Yeah, everyone is. Well, Pete, thank you so much for making time to come on this show. It's so nice to see you at the EO Regional Conference in Huntington Beach a few months ago. I really appreciate your share today. I think it's absolutely amazing that you were able to do as much as you did in 41 years. Thanks for coming on the Edge of Excellence.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.